Hey everybody, Matt Master, back with Elder Scrolls, and I got the Wizard, and I figured I'd go through a full list of Wizard skills, do a complete review of everything that they got. It took quite a while to get here, and I'm actually missing a couple skills. I don't really consider them the most important skills, although one I really want. But going over it, the way I've built my wizard is a 5-to-1 ratio on 5 magicka to 1 health, no stamina. I don't feel a need for stamina. Could be a very couple specific builds out there maybe designed to use stamina. I don't see it as a necessity. Magicka defines all your abilities' potency, including the pets, including the buffs, everything that's defined by magicka, that uses magicka, is defined by magicka. It's just the way it works. Enough said there. So how does that happen? Your pet's health, your pet's damage is based off of magicka. The armor you get from bound armor is based off of magicka. The damage that you do with Endless Fury is based off of magicka. How much surge you get from surge is based off of magicka. Everything's based off of magicka if it uses magicka. If it uses stamina, it's based off of stamina. And that's just how it rolls. So I'm just going to go top to bottom. And we're going to start with the Dark Magic tree, and we'll start with the Dark Magic's ultimate, Negate Magic. Probably one of the most underrated ultimates, or maybe least understood ultimates. What happens is this puts out an 8-meter radius bubble. And this bubble, anything that's in it when it's first cast is stunned and silenced, anything that's in it. And it lasts for 9.5 seconds. Actually, when you point it out, it'll turn into somewhere around 12 seconds. It's a phenomenal ability. 12-second stun is crazy. It works on a lot of bosses, 3-ups, 2-ups, 1-ups. Any boss that has a star or an asterisk next to its name, 1, 2, or 3 of those pips next to the health bar, it actually works on most of them. Group dungeons, it's phenomenal. Crazy duration. Not necessarily stunned for the full duration. However, it morphs into some really useful abilities as well. Some extra damage negation. It's just a really underrated ultimate. If you're looking for a more utilitarian ultimate, that is definitely the way to go. We got Crystal Shards here. I've personally already morphed it into Crystal Fragments. And Crystal Shards is a very high damage ability. One of the highest damage casting spells there is for the magic that it costs. It actually exceeds the magic it costs. It starts off with a 2-second casting time, however, but it does knock an enemy down for 2 seconds. Very good single target direct damage spell. The morphs are good. I like Crystal Fragments personally. It gives a chance to make your next next spell an instacast with a 50% reduced activating ability. So it doesn't cost as much mana, and it will be instacast. Very awesome. So if you're using other spells, is what I normally see it happening, like summoning a pet, using a different spell. All of a sudden you'll see Crystal Fragments. This spell will be instacast and cost half the mana. That's basically how that works out. It is kind of ambiguous in the wording, but that's what happens. In case, another underrated spell. It has a wide area effect, basically the same size of Wall of Elements. What it will do is root enemies. As you see, it says immobilizes them for 4.5 seconds. Actually, if you put a point in it and then put another point in to morph it, it'll go to somewhere around 6.5 seconds. And That's a long route. It works on most mobs. Not quite so many of the three dots or three asterisks mobs, but it does work on a lot of mobs. Makes group pulls very controlled. And then it does have a very powerful morph, the one I like, not the one that does damage. However, there is a morph that will slow mobs after this expires for another 6.5 seconds, giving you 12.5 seconds of control. That's awesome, awesome ability. A Rune Prison disorients enemy for 16 seconds. It sounds awesome. It's kind of weird though. It would be a great opener because it's 1.5 second cost. Basically, what happens is enemies have negatives to hit you now. They do less damage. They're all confused. They will charge at you. They'll still attack you. Things still seem to happen. Wasn't a great fan. I didn't really use it too much. Didn't like it. Never morphed it. And the morphs, from what I saw, didn't really add to what I would use it for. But if you're going single target build and you wanted something to control, this would be kind of in it. Dark Exchange. A lot of people use this. A lot of people use this because they have no other use for stamina. This drains 21% of your stamina, but returns 204 health in magicka while channeling. You'll channel it for 4 seconds. You don't have to hold down a button. You just hit it, and you'll channel, and you'll heal and get magic back. They use that as a way to funnel life and funnel magic back up in groups. Very handy ability. As you can see, I don't use it. I do have a video up of what I'm doing, and it is in a pretty tough spot. It's a public dungeon with some multiple one-up pulls. It handles them quite well. And I manage without the mana return. But if you were looking for a mana return ability, this would be it, because you have no use of stamina anyways. And then Daedric Mines. Very disappointing ability. First off, it's not really an AoE ability, even though it starts wording like an AoE ability. The first enemy that hits the mine takes the damage. It does not do an AoE damage when the mine is tripped. And then that enemy is immobilized, so it kind of sucks, because you would kind of like it if that same enemy would trip all 3 mines. That would be pretty interesting, because that's a lot of damage at once. It could actually almost kill off an enemy, especially if there's multiple AoE sources on top of the mines. That would definitely wipe out an enemy. However, the fact that they're immobilized means the damage is getting spread out as well, and they're not exploding doing AoE damage. They just do AoE. They just do damage to the single target that walks over it. Very disappointing. I would not bother with that. Obviously, if you're going to go hardcore into dark magic, you'd want to point everything out. Unholy Knowledge gives you reduced ability magicka and stamina costs. Very handy. This is handy no matter if you're using any or not. Notice it doesn't say you have to have dark magic abilities, it just doesn't. Blood magic. Hitting an enemy with a dark magic spell heals player for 5% max health. Notice it doesn't say you have to do damage. You could use utility spells in this and still hit an enemy and get 5% max health. Also makes me wonder if in case hitting multiple enemies, do you get multiple 5%? It's never tested. Persistence. Increase the duration of dark magic spells by 10%. You can actually get 2 points in there, so 20%. That's what I started talking about, in case getting it to 6.5 seconds. And then Exploitation. Increased critical strike chance by 7% when attacking targets affected by dark magic. Again, making a case a very solid thing to do with AoE builds. I do my thing, but if I weren't doing what I was doing, in case would be the second thing I would do, and I would point out the full tree and make in case also snare. So that'd be 12 seconds of them being affected, giving me extra crit for all my AoE on top of them. Things do die pretty quick that way. Moving on to Daedric Summoning. Probably one of the most useful utilitarian ultimates there is. Summon Storm Atronach. It morphs. Either morph is fine. One does more damage. One lasts longer with more hit points. Both are awesome. You can't go wrong. And then, of course, we got the familiar, unstable familiar. I take the volatile familiar. The other familiar is about 10% more health, which doesn't seem worth it to me, where the volatile familiar does more damage and explodes and stuns when it explodes when it dies. I find the stun very, very handy, even though it doesn't stun everything. It stuns some stuff, and when it does stun, it's pretty super. Daedric Curse. Interesting skill. Never really played with it. It's a long duration. One of the morphs will shorten the duration, and another morph adds more AoE, I believe. I forget what the other morph really does. The shortened duration is the only one that really stuck out. And what this does is basically curses an enemy, and when it expires, they finally take damage. However, they can only have one curse active at a time, so you can't stack multiple curses on top of a boss and just wait for them to tick off. It would be pretty awesome if you could, or on a single mob in a group pull, because it does do AoE damage. It would be interesting, yet again. 6 seconds is long to wait. 3.5 seconds, which is the morph, is a little bit better. I'm still not a fan. There's no other effect with it. It doesn't seem like a curse. It just seems like Daedric wait to do damage. That's what it seems like. And then we got the Twilight, Winged Twilight, and then you can morph it. One morph would be to increase your mana regen and the mana regen of all those around you. I don't find that one to be the smartest one to pick, because most players with a mana or magicka dependent character are already at or pretty close to that soft cap of regeneration already. And then you lose a lot, and it doesn't really do too much of that magicka regeneration anyways. I find the Twilight Matriarch much better because it heals a player's health when they blow 35%. That can save your butt so many times. It's pretty awesome. Especially if you solo a lot. It's crazy awesome. Yeah, I guess you can't really go wrong with either one. I much prefer the Matriarch. It saves you a lot. The other one doesn't really give you too much magicka. Bound Armor, very, very strong item for or spell for certain situations. I do have a Battle Mage build that I'll be working out. It works very well if you like to be in the melee. And this is something that can be morphed with extra spell resist as well, and you can definitely hit your hard cap with the mage in light armor for armor and spell resistance. Conjured Ward, very awesome spell. Gives you a lot of extra hit points as a shield. It has a morph where your pets do 33% more damage. That's pretty awesome. Can't say enough for this. This is obviously on the tree for one of my builds. And then the passives, rebate. Player receives 15% max magicka when one of their summoned creatures is killed. If you're running pets, you might as well have it. Power Stone, reduce the cost of ultimates by 15%. If you're not even using any of these skills, you might as well have that. Daedric Protection increases player's health regeneration rate by 20% with a summoned ability slotted. Obviously, if you got one slotted, you might as well have that. That includes the Atronach. Expert Summoner provides bonuses for summoned creatures. Obviously, if you got them, you might as well have points into this. Storm Calling. Another one that's a little bit more utilitarian, although it's got probably one of the highest damage AoE spells out there, other than ultimates. Overload is more of a utilitarian type ultimate. What it does is increases the light and heavy attack damage of your light and heavy attacks by 9%. You can toggle it on and off. In other words, as soon as you get 107 ultimate, you can turn it on. However, it doesn't drain. It only drains when you do a light or heavy attack. So you can leave it on and run around and build up all kinds of ultimate. And then when you need it in a situation that's kind of bad and you need some extra damage, you can burn it off. It does a little bit better than 9% what it says. It's a lot of damage that kind of goes out. It hits multiple targets, I believe, is what's happening. And then you can stop using it. As long as you don't go down to 0 ultimate, it stays toggled on. And you can build up ultimate and then use it as needed again. So it's kind of neat in that fashion. Let's see here. This Mage's Fury, pretty awesome spell. It's your executability. I call it an executability because if the target's below 20% health, it takes an extra almost 400% or 400 damage. It deals 125 already, so that would make it 525. Basically, an execute, you wait for it to go to 20% health and you start spamming this, and the target dies. And if it I have it morphed, so if it dies from this ability, you get 240 magicka back. It only costs 170 magicka. I consider it a single target ability, even though it does AoE ability when it explodes, just because you're really looking for that execute point. And then we got our lightning form. Lightning form increases the armor and spell resistance by, well, in this case, 1,575. That's just a massive amount for 6 seconds and does 34 shock damage to nearby enemies every second. Increases. I have it morphed to increase speed by 28%. The other morph increases duration by 2 seconds. I find running faster in melee much better. This is kind of a melee thing. And it works very well with certain melee builds. I will be doing a melee build. Lightning pool. What is this one? Lightning splash with lightning flood. So lightning splash creates a pool of lightning for 3 seconds that does 64 shock damage every half second. This is about one of the most damaging AoE abilities out there. That's not an ultimate. That's just fast damage. It's aggravating damage. It's lightning. With your some of the passives on the destruction staff, this causes it to do extra damage to all other targets. It gets nuts the kind of damage that happens with this spell. It aggroes like mad. Be careful when you use it. And then allies also get to use Conduit, which does 318 shock damage when they activate it. There's just all kinds of damage pouring off of this ability. And then Lightning Flood increases the radius by 2 or 3 meters as opposed to the duration. I much prefer the radius being bigger. It affects a lot more mobs. Surge, again, another one of those abilities if you're using a lot of light and heavy attacks in some of the melee builds. Very, very powerful. Increases weapon damage by 52 for 8 seconds. It has some morphs where your critical hits heal you. That's awesome, especially if you're going to be standing toe-to-toe with things or running around them. Obviously, running around really fast gets you in and out of trouble. And then Bolt Escape, I don't have it, but it basically teleports the player forward and stuns nearby enemies for 1.5 seconds. It has a morph, I believe, that does damage. Makes it kind of interesting. I don't see that as a big thing that I'm going to be worried about. Some of the passes here, we got Capacitor. This increases magicka regeneration by 10%. You don't need anything. You should take this no matter what. Energize increases damage of storm calling abilities by 5%. Obviously, that's useful if you got them. Disintegrate gives all lightning spells a 10% chance to instantly disintegrate low health targets. That's pretty awesome. And then Expert Mage reduces the cost of storm calling abilities. That's pretty good too. Weapon, I'm only going to go over Destruction Staff because that's really what I have. And then Destructive Touch. If you have the staff, you probably already played with it. I don't like it because it's really short range. It's high magic cost. It does a really low damage. It does do some extra things based on the staff that you have. Again, I prefer shock most of the time. I prefer the lightning. A lot of people like fire. or Frost would be really strong solo as well. I like Lightning because a lot of spells effects have something happens per hit, and the Lightning heavy attack is a constant attack which does multiple hits per second, so I exploit that working mechanic for the time being that I can. And then, of course, we got Wall of Elements, and then I take Elemental Blockade because it affects a wider area instead of the first tick of the ability doing more damage, which, who cares? I'd rather hit twice the size of the area than just have one tick do twice the damage. Double the AoE is much better. And then we got Force Shock. This is actually a pretty strong early on ability. I used it for quite some time. It deals flame damage, frost damage, and shock damage, and has a 40% chance to apply chilled, frost, or concussion status to targets. It almost does equal amounts of damage to magicka used. It's insta-cast. It's got a good range. Definitely like it. And it's got a pretty good morph where it can stun a caster, which is very handy as a caster, or a morph that it can do extra damage to things that are burning, shocked, or disoriented. Usually I use it single target, so I like the one that stuns the caster much better. But it's a very strong spell to use early on. And actually it works well with weakness to elements, which reduces spell target's resistance to fire, shock, or cold by 40% for 18 seconds. Has a very strong morph where every time a target is hit by fire, shock, or cold, you get magic back. Again, using a lightning staff with the heavy attack, it does multiple attacks per second, like 6 to 8. Each one of those attacks can tick off a magic return for you. You can fill up your magic supply very fast that way. And Force Shock will tick that off as well. And then casting Force Shock, if you have crystal fragments on your crystal shard, this will come free to cast, well, insta-cast with half the mana. And that's basically what I do, is spam this until this procs and throw this out there. It's a pretty good combination. And then Impulse is a point-blank area effect spell with a high radius. It does decent damage, almost as much damage as the magicka cost. However, you do have to stand in the thick of things, and it has a chance to apply concussion, chilled, or burning based on the staff being used. It doesn't do all three. It would be much better if it did all three. It has a good morph. One morph which lowers the max health of targets hit. Another morph which puts a damage over time ability on. It's interesting, but it tends to make you want to burn your mana out with it, which is why I don't like it so much. Passive-wise, we got Trifocus, Frost Attacks Snare by 40% for 3.5 seconds, Shock Attacks deal 10% splash damage. This is what I was talking about, doing the shock to 2 nearby foes, and Fire Attack increases critical strike rating with destruction spells against target by 10%. Doing that lightning splash, it's nasty. Doing 10% extra damage to other 2 targets, it just starts radiating across everything. Penetrating magic, all destruction spells bypass 10% spell resistance. Elemental Force, increased chance to apply fire, shock, and cold by 15%. Ancestral Knowledge, heavy attacks charge 10% faster. And Destruction Expert, restore 127 magicka when killing an enemy with destruction spell. Mind you, destruction spells are only destruction staff spells. And then armor, all these are really good. Evocation increases your magicka, reduces your magicka cost of spells by 3% per piece of light armor. I mean, 21% less magicka cost is awesome. Increased base magicka regeneration by 4% per piece of light armor. 28% magicka regeneration is awesome. That's what I'm saying. You don't really need that regenerating matriarch. Spell warding increases spell resistance 8% per piece of the light armor equipped. 560 spell resistance. Prodigy, 10% chance for spells to cause critical damage while light armor set of 5 or more being equipped. So you got plus 10 crit already. And then concentration, players' spells ignore 6% of enemies' spell resistance per piece of light armor equipped, ignoring 56% of targets' spell resistance already. That's probably why if you put on a 12% or 16% spell penetration staff, it doesn't seem like it does much. It really does. You're just adding on to what you're already doing. You're already doing a lot. With soul magic, I like them. I mean, if you die, it's kind of like a screw everything around you ability. Soul summons, this allows you to revive once every hour for free. And then soul lock, every time you kill something with a weapon, 5% chance to fill up a soul gem. That's awesome in itself. Saves you thousands of gold. Vampire. Some awesome skills here, some not so awesome skills. Some very situational skills, I guess. The ultimate Devouring Swarm, Bat Swarm. So Bat Swarm does a lot of damage, 168 damage to enemies within 10 meters. That's a massive area. With Devouring Swarm, every enemy hit returns 160 health. It's awesome. So every second it does 168 damage to everything within 10 meters, and then everything hit returns 168 health every hit. It's just it's insane how good that is. It's so cheap to use too. It fills up rather quickly. Sometimes I use it, and by the time I'm done killing whatever I used it on, it's almost full up, if not full up again. That's how bad it is. It's nasty. Drain Essence. Originally intended to be a way to heal the vampire, this spell kind of sucks. Probably really strong PvP-wise, especially if you're one-on-one PvP. The reason why it sucks PvE is because anything that's one up or higher, 1+ mob, anything that's got an asterisk next to its name, tends to completely ignore the spell. And you usually find out whether or not that mob's going to completely ignore that spell when you hit the button. If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And all it does is in the upper right-hand corner says the mob is too powerful for that effect. You don't get the healing, you don't get the damage, nothing happens. It's all or nothing. It sucks. It's like, how could you make a skill worse is really what they did with this skill. It's usually going to work on any non-1+ mobs, but, you know, it really sucks to find out you can't use it when you have to have it work. That's why it's not on my bar and will probably never be on my bar except for maybe PvP, where it should always work. Again, same thing with Mist Form. It sounds nifty. You take 75% reduced damage from all sources and gain invulnerability to healing magic and control effects for 4 seconds. So you can't be controlled, you can't be snared or nothing like that. You take 75% less damage from all sources. That's not 100%, but at least it's something. What they're not telling you is you absolutely can't do anything else but move around. You can't sprint, you can't potion, you can't use a skill, you can't attack, you can't heavy attack, light attack, skills, anything. You can't hit an ultimate. You can't do nothing but hit this. So, in my opinion, that really, really sucks. Unless, maybe, you know, if you're a tank or in PvP again and you actually get the attention of everybody, you hit that button, you just said, ha, you blew everything on me for nothing. That could be very handy in those kind of situations. I would lay down my AoE and get all the mobs to come at me and then hit this. Kind of handy in that situation. It has a morph which sounded really interesting, it said 75 poison damage every half second while active, which would make it very, very awesome. It could very well work into a rotation of AOE, AOE rotation. However, what it really does is 75 poison damage every 2 seconds. So actually, it sucks. Don't know if it's broken, mistooled, what's going on, but as it is right now, it doesn't go on to the bar either. But this is still awesome. And this is really awesome. This is why you are a vampire right here. That and a couple passives. Savage feeding, take it, because when you feed, you don't do any damage at all to this mob. It's so good. It's terrible. You really should be doing damage. You're healing up a storm, but you do no damage to the mob. And then you are stunned after you do it for about 1.5 seconds, maybe 2 seconds. So if you don't have this, they turn around and start attacking you, actually. Supernatural Recovery, this is probably another reason why you took it. 10% Magical Recovery or 10% Spirit Stamina Recovery. Blood Ritual, this allows you to make a vampire, another player, turn into a vampire. Undeath, increased damage mitigation when player is below 30% health. Damage mitigation can increase up to 50% as health decreases. So basically what that's saying is once you hit that 30% health mark, your mitigation can increase as you lose health up to a total of 50%. So at 1% health, you probably got 50% extra mitigation. Now at rank 10, which I'm almost there, that's going to go at 50% health. It's going to start increasing my mitigation. So it's actually a pretty handy ability as well. Unnatural Resistance. Health recovery is improved in Vampirism stages 2 for 4. You're going to want that. And Darkstalker, you're going to have to sneak. You sneak in order to feed on mobs, and you can only feed on the races that can be players. Anything else you can't feed on, so you need to be able to sneak, and you want to be able to make sure that works. So Darkstalker is definitely worth taking. Now, as a mage, I didn't take any of the Fighters Guild stuff because it's all stamina based, so I'm not getting as well as damage as I could. As you can see, this is only doing 180 damage for 316 stamina. If I was stamina based, this would be doing much more damage for the stamina cost. I don't know much about these. I haven't done them. However, Intimidating Presence will save you some money and time. It's worth a point. Slayer will give you extra weapon power and spell power against undead and Daedric enemies, and Banish the Wicked gives you extra ultimate when killing an undead or Daedric. They're definitely worth taking, these two. These other ones, not necessarily needed. This definitely not needed until you get to Cybra. Mage's Guild. Awesome stuff. The second skill I don't have, Meteor. I would love to be able to use it and fly it down, although I highly doubt it's going to really exceed that swarm. But it sounds really nasty, and it sounds awesome to be able to use. I want to use it. Mage Light is probably one of the ones that you see a lot of people running around and overusing. The problem with Mage Light is not the fact that it reduces max magicka, no problem with that. It's the fact that it increases spell crit. Fully leveled and then morphed, it can do 20% spell crit, which sounds pretty awesome. Spell crit basically does 60% extra damage, so 20% spell crit gives you 12% extra spell damage. You can probably get more damage out of having an extra skill slotted and doing something for you than you can just having 20% spell crit. Really depends on the build and what you're doing. But, you know, my preference is I'm going to get much more damage out of a pet. I'm going to get much more damage out of one of these skills than I am going to get out of 20% spell crit, because that's only going to affect spells. So that won't affect your pets. It's not going to affect your weapon attacks. They're not spells. Keep that in mind. Entropy. I like this ability. It's not the greatest ability, but it's very, very handy, as you can throw it up on multiple targets when you start having different sources of life income coming at you. When AoE multiple targets doesn't become effective, for instance, you have a couple of 1-ups, 2-ups that you have to deal with, I can put Entropy on both of those and have that tick away. And then I have Degeneration where my lightning staff attacks multiple times a second, and then I have a chance for each of those attacks to heal me again. I have life incoming through this. That's what I like about it. Ideally, if I'm not getting attacked, I won't need it, and then it's just basically a damage over time ability. But that's what I find it is kind of like a utilitarian damage spell. Without this, if I had mana issues, I would probably go with Elemental Weakness and put the mana regen on, even though I don't do a lot of elemental damage. And then Fire Rune. Fire Rune is actually a pretty awesome spell for the simple fact that for 1 point, if you put it in there, if you're dealing with a place where there's a lot of bots, you can put this on the ground where the boss spawns. Say there's a ton of bots around a boss spawn point in a dungeon, and you're trying to get the kill and you can't get the kill. If you put this on there, it will be the first thing that hits. You will get the kill credit, you will get the loot credit, and you'll be all set. You won't have to deal with all those bots, and you don't have to even cast on them. That first hit will get you both. I've done it 20 out of 20 times. It's worked. It's a very awesome spell. Equilibrium, not such a good spell because it trades health for magicka, and we already have that class ability, which basically turns stamina into health in magicka, which is much, much better for us. So Equilibrium is not really a smart way to go. Persuasive Will, just like the Fighters Guild, this will save you money and time. Definitely worth a point. Reduce magicka and health costs of Mages Guild abilities. If you're going to use one, you might as well have it. Increase duration of Mages Guild abilities. If you have one and you're going to use one, you might as well have it. Magic Controller increases max magicka and magicka recovery by 1% for each Mages Guild ability slotted. If you got one, you might as well have it, obviously. And then casting Mages Guild ability increases spell power by 10% with the next attack. The effect lasts up to 8 seconds casting a Mages Guild ability. If you're going to cast one, you might as well have it. So there's a reason to have one. Undaunted, not using any of them. These are magicka-based abilities. They're just kind of strange and utilitarian. Never got into them. And they're really group-oriented. So they seem very situational. Maybe the Necrotic Orb. Just not my flavor yet. That's really it. The racial for High Elves are really strong. For Sorcerers, obviously Destruction Staff. You learn those really quick. Increase max magic recovery while in combat by 9%. Increase max magicka by 10%. Increase damage with cold, fire, or shock by 3%. And that's it. That's all the abilities of the Sorcerer. I'll have another video out using the build. And it's in a pretty tight place, so not a bad place to show it off. And hope this helps. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll talk to everyone later.